You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Monday. That's right. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire, the USA Today Sports Media Group. Finally back and doing it. Had an off week last week. We will venture to do our best this week. Obviously, starting on a Monday is a good thing. Friday is a little tricky because I have my grandfather's memorial finally, so not sure if we'll have a Friday show, but we will try. But we will do our best. We have some things to talk about right now. I think that the one thing that I want to talk about most, and what we're going to start out with, and we're going to see how long it carries us because it might carry me the whole show. I don't think it will. But I want to talk about, I wrote a piece today on name, image, and likeness seeming to have jumped the shark, because it really feels like it has to me. And if you don't know why I'm saying this, it all starts with, and then not ends with, but it doesn't even start to, but this is the point to me where it's gotten to be too much, and that is Jaden Rashada, quarterback, committing to Miami. And there are reports, started by On3, it's been denied by the booster, saying it's inaccurate, greatly exaggerated, whatever, that with going to Miami, he is getting an NIL deal of $9.5 million. Now, when you consider that college guys can be in school 3 or 4 years, that's a pro contract, right? There are pros making less than that. And while it's not necessarily the monetary what have you that has me up in arms, because as you know, if you've been following along with me in Locked On Wolverines, and you understand my beliefs, I'm a big belief in free market and things of that nature, and okay, so that's fine. However, $9.5 million for a kid who has never spent a single second in college. That, to me, that doesn't feel right. And we'll get to some of the implications as to what that means. But let's just look at it on its face. Just the idea of a kid getting that type of money as a recruit. Say it's 9.5 spread out over 3 years. It's, $3.1 something million a year, through a 3.13-ish. And for a kid that very well might not pan out, right? He's a 4-star. He is, as far as 24/7 Sports is concerned, their proprietary rankings, he would be a 5-star if they basically say, all right, we're putting our rankings out right, or ending our rankings right now. Everything's said and done because he's 29th in the country. So he's obviously thought very highly of. However, certainly we have seen those types of players not live up to their potential, keeping in mind, Michigan's had one at quarterback, and as you know, I'm a giant Shea Patterson fan. But if you looked at Shea Patterson's resume compared to his ranking, you might be a little underwhelmed. Now, I do think that some of that might be how Michigan used him. He had some injury issues, both at Ole Miss as well as at Michigan, which precluded him from really kind of reaching his potential. Maybe some other on-field things. But that kind of goes to show you that should be something of a cautionary tale. And certainly Shea is not, that he's not like the shining star of it. He's local to us. So we understand that that's not necessarily always going to be a beneficial situation. Essentially trying to get a 5-star and have that type of thing. I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashawn Gary, there are a couple there that you would sit there and say, maybe they aren't quite up to that level, right? But then you would look at some other guys, Devin Bush, Chase Winovich, Hassan Haskins, and you would say, yeah, they definitely are. So with that in mind, what are you also saying to your team? If you are bringing in a guy, hasn't taken a single class, hasn't been in a weight session, hasn't taken a snap, doesn't know what any of that's about. What are you saying to the rest of your team if it's just like, that's the golden child right there. That's the one. He like, that has some ramifications that can ripple through a culture. And Miami certainly already has been known as being a culture that hasn't exactly, and keep in mind, I love the U. You've heard me talk about it on this show. I am a fan of the U generally. It's kind of like the anti-Michigan. I just think that's why I watched the U documentaries, the 30 for 30s, and was just like, you know what? I hated them in that period, but I'm all in now. So with that in mind, though, it's under the table dealings is one thing, I guess. Over the table, it's another thing. What are you saying to your team when that's a team sanctioned situation, essentially? And obviously, it's not necessary. That Cristobal isn't going to be out there being like, "Yeah, we got him $9.5 million. Good job, us." But he might. You don't know. Ryan Day's out there saying to boosters, "We need $13 million. There's the number we need from you right now. We need that." So that might not be as taboo as it seemed. But what does that say about your team? I understand. They're trying to build something. They feel like they got the quarterback of the future. They went all in. But to those quarterbacks that might be on campus, struggling for a depth chart spot, trying to build yourself up, and you essentially just told that guy that's worked for 2 years and is waiting for his turn, and maybe he finally started to turn that corner right then. You're telling him essentially, hey, you're not going to be that guy because we are not. That financial investment, that wasn't for you. You were a walk-on, or you were low rated, or you weren't as wanted. Think of Tom Brady. Tom Brady credits a lot of his development and what he was able to do in the NFL to his time at Michigan. My mail app here, I tried to close it. It's just refusing. It's just making so much noise. Sorry about that. Anyway, it's cultures are built in a lot of ways out of hard work. Teams are built out of a team idea. And if you're a guy that, I understand they have a collective that everyone's supposed to get some money at Miami. I'm pretty sure that's under investigation as well. But all of these things kind of converge to where it's just kind of a bad situation. There's, especially just upon committing, right? Hey, you're going to commit. If you commit here, this is what you're going to get. And that's where I appreciate the Jim Harbaugh line of thinking when he went on the Jed Hughes podcast last week. And he's like, listen, we're still selling the college experience. That's what we're doing. We're not about to start paying recruits. Our idea is like, you're going to come here, you're going to get that transformational situation, right? And getting that transformational situation, if you play well, then yeah, there's going to be jersey sales. There's going to be, other monetary things that come into play. And we've seen that at Michigan, right? Guys like Blake Corum. Blake Corum, once he started like those first couple games, suddenly it went from Blake Corum's got a little something happening to Blake Corum has got a car and he's got all kinds of stuff. These Subway, Outback, all of these different places, which makes sense, right? Because, and that's what I said last year around this time. I said, like, once a guy has a big game, that's just going to take off. Blake Corum goes off against Washington, takes off. That's what you can expect. And that's, if we're in this world of name, image, and likeness, that's the right way to do it. Let's get into some of the wrong things, some of the nefarious parts of the Miami situation as I see it. But before we do, listen, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so we are still talking about this NIL situation with Miami, which I just think it's jumped the shark already. We've been doing it for about a year now, and it's gotten to that point already where it's like, all right, this is out of control. Something's got to give. I think that the thing that I don't know how enforceable it is, but to me, the drawing line for sure, without question, should be recruits who have yet to have signed should not have an agreement as far as NIL is concerned. And I understand that that's still their right as a name and whatever, but however that this ends up becoming where you start getting into fraudulent situations, right? And you know we're seeing rumors of other situations involving Michigan targets, and you know we've long heard about situations of I think back to a guy like Isaiah Wilson, who was essentially set to commit to Michigan before Georgia, from what I had heard, had some little nefarious what have you going on based off of the conversations with people had that are more towards this side of things. Maybe it's just an emotional reaction, but I mean, we've heard of that from guys like him or Otis Reese or, some of those others where, they were committed or near committing and then they end up flipping to go somewhere else. And, you sit there and say, bag man. So the way that this kind of looks on its surface with a guy like, with Jaden Rashada, which, I mean, again, good for him. Currently it's not legal. Pay for play is not legal, but that's what it looks like on its face, right? Miami booster potentially giving a guy that type of landmark deal. Listen, it seemed crazy when we were talking like, yeah, Bryce Young, who was already on campus, by the way. Like, he's got $1 million coming in from NIL. Like, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with Bijan Robinson driving around in a Lamborghini, or what's the deal with CJ Stroud? He turned down a Bentley or I think it was a Bentley deal to get a Mercedes SUV, and he can trade it in every 90 days or something. Listen, fair game. Dude was a Heisman finalist. Cool. Yeah, I expect that. If Aiden Hutchinson had another year, I would expect that he would have the same type of deal. I mean, I don't think that's the car he drive. He bought a Ford Bronco, as soon as he became the number 2 overall pick in the NFL. Aiden's that more of that blue collar guy, and I'm envious. I want one of those Ford Broncos. I think that's my next car. Anyway, I love Murder Bus, but I want an SUV convertible. I think that's a cool idea. Anyway, I digress. That's fine. Those guys are proven, right? Bijan Robinson is a star at Texas. Aiden Hutchinson he didn't get anything. He was a star at Michigan. CJ Stroud is a star at Ohio State. Bryce Young, we all kind of felt like was probably going to be a star at Alabama, and congratulations, he wins the Heisman Trophy. That makes sense. But a kid who's never done a single thing other than take an official visit, maybe some unofficial visits at your school, should not be outpacing clearly everybody. And I mean, $9.5 million is a completely different ballpark. When we're talking like Rashawn Gary, Clemson, the types of figures that were bandied about was like $300,000 over 3 years. That's for the number 1 overall guy. Again, free markets, cool. But again, if you are making essentially as much as, if you're making, let me back this up. If you are making more as a recruit than your position coach, and in that case, probably your offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis, how much are you going to listen to that guy? That is just astounding to me. Again, if you go out there and you earn it, right? Like you have earned the right to go out there onto the field. Because keep in mind, if the booster's giving you that much, and there's like a kind of a wink between the coaches and the booster who ended up doing that. And like, oh, I'm giving it to him because we're going to put his face on all my Burger King franchises or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they haven't exactly announced what the reason was, which is what makes it suspicious to me. Then, I think then there's probably an understanding that guy's got to play right away. And that guy's got to see the field as often as possible until I say you cut it. Whereas you have other guys like the ones I mentioned, CJ Stroud or Bijan Robinson, in those types of cases, they've already learned, they've earned their spot. They've built that rapport with their coaching staff. And it's essentially, you're getting what you're getting as a reward. It's not a potential based reward. And that's the thing. That's the free market and all of that. That kind of goes out of the window when it's a situation of we are paying you for your potential. Come to our school, right? We need you and your potential at our school. That's where everything becomes a completely different scenario. And I feel like Miami, as it had through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, is just playing with fire with this situation. Just absolutely just messing around with some matches over an open can of gasoline, which that is expensive, so don't do that, right? Anyway, it's just getting to be too much. So I really fully think that this is a terrible scenario. It needs to have that type of regulation, essentially, of like, not that you have to have even played a snap, because there's a lot of guys that might be really well known, that haven't done as much. You think about a guy like Austin Hatch, who didn't actually end up getting to really be a player, due to his circumstances, like a real one, in the sense of like he wasn't in the rotation. I mean, he was a real player, but you know what I mean. Or you think of some, I know I'm staying on basketball, but like CJ Baird, like that. Those are the types of guys. That's a fun story, And you can see where, okay, NIL, that could work. They could get an endorsement and something like that. So it shouldn't be based off of playing time. Certainly there are guys that aren't going to be big names, but I mean, I just think that from a cultural situation, it's a bad thing for Miami. You're risking blowing up that whole team concept, and that really generally works, right? Like Alabama, for all the talent they've had really good teams, right? This Georgia was the perfect example up until last year, and I mean, again, this last year was actually a great example of a great Georgia team, but a lot of times it was a collection of high-end talent that could not fully coalesce, at least especially not in the bigger moments. Michigan was a collection last year in 2021 of solid talent, of course, across the board. Amazing talent in a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, as Dax Hill and David Ojabo. Of course, those are high-end talents. There were a lot of high-end talents on that team, but generally, and I still think that what this team is right now, a lot of really good talent playing together as a team, playing as one. And you disrupt that when you are out there just all willy-nilly handing out money. Because those guys who worked and might deserve it, I know that sounds antithetical to a lot of the things that I normally would say, but I mean, in a way, I mean, it is a team. I mean, it's not, football is not an individual situation. And to risk alienating a lot of guys for the sake of, I mean, he's going to have to come into that locker room and prove he's already going to have his back against the wall to some degree. And the expectations for that kid are going to be sky high, which to me isn't necessarily fair either, right? Because he's going to have to come in and he better perform at least at an elite level, right? At least. Because it'll get ugly real quick, and that can damage a kid. You've seen that happen with a lot of different guys that were high-end talents. Tate Martell, Ohio State. And then the U and all other places. So I just don't think that the U has learned their lesson when it's come to a lot of culture situations. And it's just a situation where I feel like they've got to figure something out, because to me, on the face, it looks like pay for play. Could be so wrong, but that's not how things should be going. All right, let's continue on momentarily. We're gonna switch gears into a couple other little quick tidbits here for a brief moment. In a moment. All right, we've got a few more minutes left. Pretty rare, right, that we have a show after I haven't been on for a while, and usually I feel like it's limping over the 20-minute mark because I haven't talked in a while. However, this is a different situation. I feel very passionate, to the point, even though I put my words on paper, even though I'm sitting here talking, I still don't feel like I'm capturing everything that I'm trying to say about the situation. But I just think it's really crazy. So Michigan has gotten a couple commits, depending on what sport you're looking at. And these are good news situations for both football and basketball. Let's start with the basketball side of things. Youssef Khayat, the Lebanese player with a wing, 6'8", I think 200 and something. I don't really remember exactly. 220, something. Who played in France. Forget the name. It's like there, but I can't remember it. He committed to Michigan on Sunday, so it looks like Michigan's kind of figured out most, if not all, of what it's going to have as far as a basketball team in 2022-23. Not sure if the Amani Bates thing is dead or not. Again, it's been, he's interested. Michigan's not. Now, maybe Michigan's interested. Obviously, there's been no commitment. Still wouldn't surprise me if he came along. Makes you wonder what the starting five is going to be for sure. Especially Jet Howard being a projected lottery pick, supposedly, next year, according to one mock draft, too early mock draft. But you've got, you're looking at, Jalen Llewellyn, Kobe Buffkin, Terrence Williams. I feel like I'm already forgetting players. That's where we're at. Obviously, Hunter Dickinson, and then, I don't even know. Is Youssef that next guy? I'm not sure. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, because I feel like the only player that I mentioned that was there's more than one starter. I don't know. My memory is not working here. So just disregard all of that. But you know what I mean? Like, you've got all those guys. I feel like a guy like Terrence Williams is going to be able to. He's been waiting his turn. He's going to step up. So excited to see how he does. Obviously, everything's going to go through Hunter, so that's going to be exciting. But you've still got other exciting guys that are going to come in. Really excited about Terrace Reed and Doug McDaniel. How quickly are they going to be able to get acclimated? Joey Baker, totally forgot about him in there too. So I have no idea. I have no idea what this team's going to look like. If they bring in Amani Bates, they really transfer portaled this thing up anyway already. And then you add in the recruiting class. Pretty cool. Then on top of that, you've got the football. They finally get a commitment, but it's not in 2023, right? We didn't even talk about the tight end who committed. And man, I am bad with names right now. So got to look at my own article and get it here. Mason Curtis, 4-star out of Nashville, Tennessee. It was a surprise. I don't think anyone expected it. But a linebacker who's a guy who's a 4-star, top 24/7, high end on 3A as well, I believe. The two that I really pay attention to. Great job by George Hilo and the staff for getting a guy that to really, relatively high end kickstart the class. Especially because they need those types of linebackers, right? And obviously they're trying to hold on to Raylan Wilson. Sounds like his official visit went really well. I haven't gotten him on the horn. Actually, I don't think I've talked to him, so something we'll do hopefully soon, since we're getting back into the recruiting of it all. But getting a guy like like him to go along with the guy like Raylan Wilson. They've already got Junior Colson. It's starting to really just bring in some of those 4 stars because that's the position group that have been kind of lacking in recruiting for a while. Linebacker has really concerned me for a while, and it's starting to look better and better. So that is excellent news for the Wolverines. And, July 1st coming up, they're hopefully going to get a bunch of 2023 guys because a bunch of Michigan's targets, Frederick Moore, Collins Amchiang, I don't know how to say his name right, but he's, although Miami has supposedly made a surge in that one, so hang on to your hats. Anyway, things are starting to perk up. Let me put it this way when it comes to recruiting, at least in 2023. I know that Dante Moore is trending very hard towards Oregon. In a situation like that, it's not ideal. I think that with Michigan's pursuit of a guy like Jaden Davis in 2024, then he was a 5-star at South Carolina. I think that that's one of those situations where you're like, okay, we've got some guys that can already help us through this. If we miss out on a 2023 guy, it's not ideal. Hopefully we develop a guy that can be an intermediary between JJ McCarthy and a 2024 guy. But if not, then maybe he's coming in and starting pretty quickly. Clearly they've got some things to work out there, but the way I look at it with a school like Oregon, and they've got a first-year head coach as a defensive head coach, there's no guarantees that they have a great season, right? And if Michigan goes out, does the same thing it did last year, maybe better, things can kind of change for the local guy. That's the good news. So the other part of it is, if a month from now, Michigan's still kind of sitting in the same spot overall recruiting-wise, doesn't have a lot more commits, is still sitting down in like the 30s or the 20s, then I'd start saying, like, well, maybe it's time to start not panicking, because certainly we've seen classes fill out more during the season, but then it's time to be concerned. I'm still not concerned about this class. I think we've seen this every year, and it's like every year everyone's like kind of flipping out and saying, I don't know how I feel about this, and then eventually it's like, don't know what we were worried about. Quarterback has become a concern, and that's really frustrating, especially when it's a guy that you offered all the way back in 7th, 8th grade, and I remember it was either me or Evan Petzold. I don't remember if it was which one it was, but one of us doing the Wolverines Wire site were the first interview that Dante ever had. So it's crazy that to think that it went from being like a local kid that you thought that was like essentially a shoe-in to maybe not coming to your school. But you know what? Sometimes those things work out for a reason, and we'll see where Michigan goes from there. But anyway, all right, that's going to do it for us today. I don't know exactly what Tuesday will hold yet. Certainly, I had other topics of conversation that I wanted to broach that I did not get to today. So we will figure out what's going on there and hit it again, hopefully, on Tuesday. But thank you for watching and or listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.